I'm a real deal. I'll shoot your liver out and hand it to you.
You know, they always say the grass isn't always green on the other side, and I think this is a perfect example of that because I'm like 3/4 of the way asleep, and it's 10:15 at night, and we are starting a podcast. Demetrius, I just can't be made happy, no matter what.
Hey, man, I've been married before. I understand. I'm not a stranger to this. But
no problem for me because at my age, I'm up every 2 hours to go potty anyhow.
You should probably get that checked out, Rob. So as always, we can get the stuff cleared up in the beginning. And this always starts with a Patreon update. So we had 3 new Patreons sign up in the past week. And again, I thank everybody so much for supporting the podcast and the future of the podcast. So a huge shout out goes to Jason Gibbs, Travis Richardson, Joachim Skovic. Again, it's so humbling to know that people are willing to really put their support behind the future of the podcast and helping me grow it. So thank you to all of them. Also, we did the first Patreon giveaway. So Dag, you were the winner of that, and he has chosen the McDermott Lucky Break Cue. So thank you, McDermott, for sending that over, and congratulations, Dag. And the next one will actually be tomorrow, which, full disclosure, this is 3/17. Tomorrow's Wednesday. We'll do another one tomorrow night. At some point in time, I'm not totally sure when, but at some point in time. So there's still time to sign up if you listen to this podcast and you're interested in the Patreon giveaways. There is still time to get signed up to get your entries in. And yes, so we'll leave that there. And the next thing we'll talk about is the Patreon support actually has funded a camera that I have ordered, and I ordered a GoPro Hero 8. So with that, I plan on doing a bunch of, video content for the podcast as well. I guess not the podcast, I guess kind of an independent thing from the podcast, but it's going to be all under the Queued Up Podcast umbrella. So, of course, we will be doing a lot of other stuff. So if you have not gotten over to the YouTube page and subscribe to the channel, make sure that you head over and do that because there will be a bunch of content I hopefully will be getting out very soon on the YouTube page. So other than that, I think that's all we got to get cleared up in the beginning. So let's move on to our shout-outs. Who wants to go first? Don't all jump at once.
Yeah, I've got a few names here to shout out to. We talk a lot about the people that go to pool tournaments and win. These are open tournaments, say, where there's no level of play guidelines or anything. It's just an open event. And the tournaments I go to now are mostly 3-cushion events. I just went to one in the Minneapolis Billiards Club. And my shout-out goes to the 7 players out of the 10 that were there that really probably know they're not going to win. They pay their $150 entry fee and think maybe if I get a shot at 4th or 5th, maybe I can get something back. But it's a chance to play the 3 players there. One of those 3 is probably going to win because they're like semi-pros, if not pro players. So this is an open event with basically some pro players at it. So the 7 players that I want to shout out to are Matt Lind, Gary Eakey, James Richards, Mike Miller, John Logan, and Mickey Campbell, and myself because I'm in one of those 7. To go there with that, only expectation is to see what you can learn and to see how you can fit in to a hierarchy within that learning. And to do that, you can't go to tournaments where you're, probably you and 10 others are the best there, but there's no really, really good players there. So that they deserve some credit. And to add something to that, John Logan, who did make the money, he came in 4th place in this. He gave the winner of the tournament, that's Freddie Lammers, his only loss of the tournament at 25-24. And Lupe Cruz's only loss of the tournament was the last match in the tournament between Freddie the guy who wins it, and he had to beat Loopy, and he won 25-23. So it was pretty darn exciting. But that's my shout-outs to those 7 guys. Just for playing, for coming and playing.
All right. Well, I'll take it away second. So my shout-out is going to go to Chris Robinson, and it's going to go to Chris Robinson because of his finish at the Diamond Las Vegas Open this past week. Chris Robinson, and maybe I should know this, so let me look it up really quick. His Fargo is 741, and if you look at some of the people that finished around him, you're looking at players like, he's finished 5th, 6th, so he's tied with Pinyi Ko. And he's just behind Ralph Souquet and Justin Bergman and obviously James Aranas and Jung-Lin Chang and players that he players he finished ahead of, like Dennis Arcoyo, Jason Shaw, Nayuki Oi, Darren Appleton. Obviously this entire field was just crazy stacked. Corey Deuel, Carlo Beato, Alexander Kazakis, Joshua Filler, Kinlin Wu, Fedor Gorst. He beat a lot of really, really, really top players that are Fargo's, 50, 60, 70 points higher than where he is. And, he grinded all the way through the A side and beat some really, really good players along the way. So just a huge shout out to Chris Robinson for, the heart and the determination that he's had in the last few years to really get himself to being, in that discussion with some of the top young players, if not just the players in the U.S. in general. So awesome to see Chris Robinson up there. He's been a friend to the podcast, and I'm hoping to get him on this week for the podcast as well to chat with me. So, shout out to Chris Robinson and continue the great playing.
Very good. Well, I agree with both of your shout outs. Very good. And that John Logan can play some billiards. But my shout out this week will go to Mr. Joe Tucker. Joe Tucker I've been a fan of his for a long time. For those that don't know, he was in his own right, and I don't know how actively he still plays, but he's definitely played some amazing pool in his day. And then he went on and became a passionate coach, instructor, and he's made some very good instructional material, some stuff that I've taken advantage of and has made a difference in my game. And so I've always, even though I didn't really know him personally, I've always looked up to him as kind of as a mentor. And I did actually have a chance to talk to him a few years ago, and he was really, really generous and helpful with giving me some good info on the game and what I should do with my journey. So he's been nothing but just a role model, a guide, somebody I've always looked up to. And then I found out that he's been kind of sneaky listening to our podcast here a few times. And he had some very kind feedback and some great words. And he's just he's a fan of what we've been doing. And boy, I'll tell you, it just feels really good to kind of have somebody like Joe that I look up to for so long it's been a pleasure. So thank you for the support, Joe. And thank you for all you've done to promote pool. And for those that don't know, check out his website. I don't actually have it handy, but if you search Joe Tucker Pool, I'm sure you can find his website. He's the one that kind of first brought the racking secrets of 9-ball and 10-ball. He's got some stuff to kind of help out with straightening out your stroke if you're having trouble hitting center and, hitting the perfect stop shot, with sighting and with aiming systems and with anything pool related. I'd give him a stop because he's very knowledgeable and he's well informed. So
where's
anyway.
He from, Demi?
I'm not sure exactly. I know it's the East Coast. I don't remember if it's
okay.
New York or Maryland or somewhere out there. So that I don't know. But he's East Coast.
I got his website for you. It is joetucker.net. So Joe, JoeTucker.net. So there's your website for him. So I guess with that, we can move on to the podcast. We will start this out by letting Demi brag all he wants about getting the call right on Jung-Lin Chang winning the event. So take your time and brag it out.
Well, I mean, you kind of did it for me. So for those that didn't catch last episode, I predicted JL Chang to be the winner of the Diamond 10 ball, and he did not disappoint. That man is just a beast, isn't he?
He is stupid solid. He just looks so solid and so steady at the table. Like, He looks like whenever you see that one guy who was playing in a 550 and under tournament, he's playing under a false name, and he's actually like a 675, and he just looks so calm and collected, and he knows he's going to win the tournament. It's just a matter of time, and it's he just looks like, what am I doing here? Why am I playing with these players? Like, I have no business being here. I'm way too good. That's how he looks when he's at the table. It's crazy to see how calm and collected and in control of the racks he is.
Yeah. His stroke to me too seemed to be it was a little shorter and compact and kind of a punch, simple stroke. I call it punch ending. I don't know, Demi, if you ever seen Jason Kirkwood stroke the stick, but it's very similar. Not quite as mechanical as Jason, but not fancy. A real calm, quiet stroke. And punching the balls and boom, boom, boom. I mean, yeah, and he smiled. They laughed during that finals match. He did something happen in the match, and it was comical to him what happened. I think he felt he got a good roll, and he smiled about it. He was trying two-rail position to go up past the side, a ball in front of the side pocket, and he feathered off of it and didn't scratch because it was about to possibly scratch, and he got position on the ball he wanted to, and he smiled a little bit. And I thought, well, I think he's acknowledging what happens with billiard players when they get lucky. They acknowledge that. They wave their hand or they nod or something or they apologize to their opponent. I mean, he kind of did that. So that was cool. I haven't seen too many, in the finals event, top pros react like that.
No, yeah, he's starting to show a little bit more color than he did in the past. He's getting really, really comfortable being in the winner's circle, it looks like. And I just think that it's amazing the game he's put together because I just can't. I mean, he's not. I don't want to compare. There's been many, many great players, but he is certainly among the historic players that have every part of the game mastered. He's not. He shoots straight.
How old is he?
So. I'll let you look that up if you want. I'm not sure offhand, but what I'll say is this: he's when it comes to slow grind games where it's tactical in nature and pushing and kicking and safeties. I mean, his decision making and game management, and I'm not just talking about like the all out saves or the all out kicks, but those in between spots where you're at the table and you can hit the ball, but you can't really do anything good with it, but you got to do something. He seems to find ways to extract all the equity out of any, those in-between spots, his decision-making, his game management, and his composure and his ability to kind of slow down and tune in on what are the right key shots and turning points and how to really find ways to win games that can go either way. He does that well. But then also when it comes into just a free-for-all rack-running competition and just offensive contest, he can break the balls and run through open racks and come with shots. He can break the balls well. He can pocket balls, really, really well. He doesn't look like Shaw and Filler when he pockets balls, but he's just calm and he's got a straight, accurate stroke and he's comfortable and knows the shots. And so he can pocket it. He can come with a good break, pocket that opening shot, and then run through the racks like water. Textbook. And so even though it doesn't look quite as explosive as some of the juggernauts of our game, his offense is as high as anybody's offense. His defense is as strong as anyone's defense. He can play both gears. He can switch back and forth and pressure. He's obviously no stranger to pressure. And you put it all together and it really is. I've rarely seen a player so well-rounded that's that strong in every part of the game. That's it.
I couldn't agree more. This is something that I would like to chat about as well because I want to go back to James Aranas in the tournament that he had because I don't want to overshadow James Aranas. We kind of expected Chang to be there. I mean, he's been a monster for several years, but James, that's quite a bit of a surprise. I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's a huge surprise that he finished second place. And the amount of players that he beat on the way to get there, he did not have an easy match the entire tournament. He started out with Rory Hendrickson, which, he's not a top player, but he is a great pro. And then
I think he only won 7-5 in that match too, I believe.
Yes, yeah. But then the second match he played Chris Melling and won 7-5, and then the third match he beat Max Leshner, which find me a European player in all of Europe that's playing better than him right now. I'll wait. He's playing an amazing pool. And then he beat Ian Costello, and then he beat Justin Bergman, and then he beat Ralph Souquet. I mean, we can have a discussion on him later on too, but what the hell is that guy doing? He's just, oh my God, he's just so solid for so many years. And then he actually beat Chang for the chair 7-4. I mean, how great of a run is that? He's beaten some of the top he's beaten like all of the top players in the world right now to get to the chair. And then this is a discussion I'd like to have too at this point is, do we like this single elimination extend the race? Because I mean, extending the race in 10 ball, only 2 games in a race to 9, I don't like that. I mean, if you're going to play a double elimination tournament, play a double elimination tournament. And if you want to make it an altered one, make the final 16 like the US Open does and switch it at that point to single elimination. I hate the idea of only having single elimination for the finals. You guys can, chime in and let me know what you think, but I just think it's so unfair to James Aranas after having an amazing tournament to lose, a single match and be done.
I see it both ways. It's funny. It's almost like I don't have an opinion because for so many years I've just played and the rules are the rules and I don't get to make them. And so I've just learned to accept my muscle that accepts things has gotten very, very strong because I just look around. I'm like, well, these are the rules. So this is what I'll have to do. And so whether it's winter break or alternate the break or the breaking rules or the length of the set or how they, whatever the weird rules that they come up with, I usually just say, well, that's the turf I'm playing on. But so it's almost hard for me to kind of have an opinion. But when I actually try to remember back, like if I were to set it up, how would I set it up? And of course, from a pool purist point of view, which is I want things fair and I want the player that plays the best throughout the tournament to have the best chance of winning. Double elimination is definitely more fair. Now, the one thing I think promoters are trying to do, of course, is, for those that don't know this, is they're trying to force a 1-set finals because they want, it's the big confrontation at the end of the movie. They want the good guy and the bad guy or whatever it is. They want the one match where it could come down to hill, one game for the tournament, which of course it could a double elimination anyway. But the point is they want one match for the tournament because they think it's going to increase viewers. And so if they're right, if somehow single set finals was like proven, if we had some kind of data and it was like, hey, you know what, it's proven that when we have a single set finals, we get 80% more views and we get more sponsors and we get more audience members. And if it's somehow good for pool to do it that way, then I guess I'd say whatever's best for, if it really is best for pool, then I'm fine with that. Because the same way that I'm not a big fan of handicap tournaments, but if that's what it needs for pool to keep going, then of course, whatever it needs to do to keep going. But I would prefer double elimination, all things being equal. And I have a hunch that they don't really have any data. I have a hunch that it's just somebody that's like, playing it wouldn't surprise me if there's just somebody with playing a gut feeling and just kind of making a call from shooting from the hip there. Well, so yeah, all in, I can understand it, but I kind of like the double elimination myself. And
what is more exciting than a hill thriller in the second set of the finals? Or, even just, hill first set, or obviously hill is going to be exciting no matter what. So we'll take that away. Going to that third set, the winner take all, you're getting exactly what you wanted from, just doing the single elimination for the finals. I mean, give the opportunity for that to happen, and then you have more eyeballs on the finals for longer. Who tunes into a finals and be like, oh, well, I was only going to watch the first set. Now that it's gone to the second, I guess I don't really care anymore. Like, no,
maybe
if anything,
maybe
it's more interest.
Maybe the thing is though, is that suppose a player that was more of an underdog. Let's suppose Chris Robinson got there to play in the finals against Chang. Let's say that Chang had won the seed, and let's say that Chris had to try to double dip Chang. People might just feel like, well, it's really, really tough for him to win even one set off Chang, and for him to do it twice, that's just not happening. Whereas if, they might not even tune in. Whereas if it's one race to 7, they'd be like, hey man, I know Chris is a little bit of an underdog, but he's playing good. He's in the finals and he knows he's only got to get to 7. He could get to 7 against anybody in the world. I don't know. I'm trying to imagine a time where that could create some additional drama. And I think maybe if there was a huge skill gap, then the 1-set final kind of creates some drama where there might not be as much drama. But from a pool purist perspective, if I'm a champion pool player and I got undefeated to the hot seat, I don't want drama. I want to win my tournament. You know what I mean? So it's like it does seem a little unfair from a pool perspective.
Yeah, I think I'm on. I agree with all the comments you guys have made about either perspective. Yeah, the pluses and minuses both ways. You'd have to get some paperwork over a period of time to really have a final judgment on the numbers, what they'd be like. I like it either way. I really like the fact that the person that came through the loser's side, say he lost his first match of the tournament, he's winning approximately twice as many matches to get to that last match. And you really, you'd have to look back at who the guy played who's on the winner's side. Maybe he only had really 2 matches out of those 5 or 6 or 7 that he played that were brutal. The rest maybe he walked through. So you've got that to consider. Now, this fella is on the winner's side, and then the guy, battles and battles match after tough match, like you mentioned, Nate, that James did. All those players that he won along that whole road. And a much harder road, but how many times we see that in a double elimination? The guy loses the first match of the tournament, comes through and wins the tournament.
Right.
He's just played more.
Yeah, but that usually happens.
On a roll.
That usually happens in amateur events. Maybe if you go back through the history of forever, you could find a situation where somebody lost in a tournament like this in their first round and came back. But I would lay some serious odds that has never happened before in a tournament like this, or like a U.S. Open or something like that.
There's no easy road on the B side here.
There's a million monsters that lost the first round. Darren Appleton lost his first round. Sergio Rivas, Sky Woodward, Alex Montepeller, Yolong Chang, Rory Hendrickson. I mean, Francisco Bustamante. I mean, what hasn't Francisco Bustamante won in the last 2 months? And he lost his first match. I mean, you can't just win back to back against players like this in this type of event. That happens in amateur events where you have 3 or 4 cupcakes that really let you get into a good solid stroke for the better players that are you run into 7th, 8th, 5th, 6th. You're only winning 3 to 4 matches that maybe are really in question.
And it has happened once. Mika Immonen, that for sure, his back-to-back U.S. Opens, his second U.S. Open, he lost his first match and won 11 in a row. But the only other thing I wanted to mention is, as long as they don't change the format or change the rules, it's different than it used to be. And if pool moves towards a 1-set finals, if that's what pool decides to do, or even a subset of the pool tournaments, as long as it's known up front, then instead of thinking about it as a double elimination tournament where you're getting shortchanged if you're the winner, you have to look at it as a tournament where you're playing a double elimination to win a qualifier, where the final 2 spots are a qualifier for a heads up match for the tournament, and that you can qualify for your finals heads up match for the tournament by breezing through the winner's side or by grinding through the loser's side, and that neither one entitles you to an advantage in the finals, but that they're both just you're playing to qualify for a finals matchup. And that if you look at it that way, then that's just kind of the reality. And there still is an advantage to being on the winner's side, because it's like, well, what is the advantage of being in the winner's side and then having any kind of undefeated record no longer help you? Well, it doesn't give you an advantage unless you want to say confidence, or in terms of not being as fatigued from having played so many matches. But that's the way pool works. If I play a rack of 9 ball and I run out perfectly where my cue ball's on a string, it doesn't give me an advantage any more than a guy that slopped through a bunch of balls and had to hook himself and jumped over a ball and wobbled some balls in. They both play the same.
That's you.
So my point is that there's not always an advantage to doing the job cleanly, but in the end, as long as they don't change the format, then you just have to shift your mindset and say, well, this is the turf I have to play on. I guess I'm playing to qualify for a finals match.
I would push back on that, and I would say that there actually is a very, very clear advantage in this type of format with this type of tournament, because Chang had to win to get back to James, but that means that Chang is still playing, and he's playing constantly for basically an hour and a half to 2 hours, while James is sitting on ice waiting for the match to actually start, and that's really, really hard. I mean, they're professionals, so they're better at it than somebody like Rob or myself, or even you to a lesser degree, Demetrius. But there is something to sitting on ice for an hour and a half while your opponent is playing and getting in stroke or staying in stroke, maybe is a better way of saying it. And you got to come in and expect to play your top game, having not really hit any balls for the last 2 hours when your opponent has won a match. I mean, that is really hard to do. If you're going to have like a 3-hour gap or something in there in between the second, third place match and the finals, I could definitely see having this, and I would agree with you at that point in time. But you're bringing Chang in basically off of playing the last match immediately, and that really actually is unfair in my opinion. You're giving.
Well, I've seen it cut the other way though, where the guy at third playing for second is just like, you know what? Let me just get through this match, and then whatever happens in the finals. I'll do my best, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But man, I'm up against it. I'm down 5-3. But just let me win this match, and then and sometimes people get to the finals and they're so spent from that last match that they're just like, all right, now I'm just gonna freewheel and see if it's my day. And you'd think, well, it's the finals. This is what they played for. They're going to be hungry and focused. But man, I've seen a lot of people come out of that last match kind of fatigued and almost satisfied because they just had to dig so deep to win that one. So anyway, we could, and I'm not arguing the point because I actually don't prefer single set finals. I don't have any, I was kind of playing devil's advocate, which is that I could see why they do it if they think it's going to increase viewers and increase, whatever, fill up the seats and all that. And I don't really have a horse in the race, but I could understand why they're doing it. And in the end, I guess what I'm saying is not so much what I believe. It's more so the rationalizations I use to accept things that I can't control.
I really like your perspective on you can make the single elimination finals by winning on the winner's side or winning on the loser side, and that's you qualify on either side. One is half the matches. That's all. But that's a good way to look at it, Demi. So whatever it is. But if it is that single match at the end, look at it that way. Qualify from either side.
Well, I guess I can go through and actually give the places because I haven't done that yet. So obviously, Jung-Lin Chang gets first place over James Aranas. Justin Bergman, great tournament for him, finishes up in third place. And I mean, given the status of Poole over the next coming months, which we'll talk, that might actually lock him up automatically for a Mosconi Cup bid. We can talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about this later on when we get to our discussion topic. But Ralph Souquet gets fourth place. Fifth, sixth goes to Chris Robinson and Pinyi Ko, and seventh, eighth goes to Kun Lin Wu and Carol Skowerski. And we'll do 9th through 12th because it goes to Dennis Arcoyo, Corey Duell, Joshua Filler, and Eklanti Kachi. So,
boy, you got some names there, don't you? And that four?
Yeah, that's a
whiz.
You could, any of those four players could probably have won this event just as easily.
Gee whiz. Yeah, and 9th through 12th. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
It's pretty good. So, I guess we can leave this discussion at there. I guess we've kind of beat the horse on that one pretty well for the most part. I mean, there's a bunch of... I guess I do want to talk about one thing I wouldn't mind, because one of the most entertaining matches that of pool that I've ever watched in the first round was actually this tournament, and it was the match between Carlo Beato and Sky Woodward. Were either of you able to watch that match?
I did not.
No, I didn't watch that one. I watched a couple different ones.
I highly advise, if you guys have some time, to go back and watch this match, because it was crazy exciting. It was back and forth all the way through. A couple, you get a small cushion here, and then it would be storming back, and it comes down to a hill thriller where Sky Woodward actually has the run out, and he misses a carom shot that I'll guarantee you he's kicking himself, wishing he could have back, because it was very makeable. And you can tell after he missed the ball that he was just in shock that he missed the ball. But basically, I mean, any of the listeners out there who wasn't able to watch this match, I highly advise going back and watching it. It was insanely entertaining, and it was just a treat to be able to watch, especially for free. I love that CSI did this all for free.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Thanks.
That was really a nice stream too, and a nice commentary.
Yeah, Jeremy Jones is just the greatest. So I guess we can leave this discussion there and move on to what's coming up.
Nothing's
coming up for any sport anywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, you guys
challenge matches, huh?
You guys have kind of hinted at it. There was, given the coronavirus, which again we're going to talk about in a little bit, a lot of, just about everything has been canceled or postponed. Just to name a few, the Super Billiards Expo has been postponed, the U.S. Open, the World Pool Masters, basically all of the Vegas tournaments besides maybe VNEA. Yeah, the BCA teams was canceled, and APA Vegas has been canceled. UPL has been canceled. Basically, everything in the next couple months that I've seen has been canceled. I haven't seen anything that hasn't been, but I'm sure there's something out there. But given the status of the virus and where we're at, not only in the U.S. but in the world, pretty much everything's shutting down. So the only real options for pool at this point is basically small matchups, which I guess we're lucky enough that Roy with Roy's Basement exists, because we get, I don't know, maybe I'm sure you could come up with a bunch of more matchups we'd rather see, but there's not a ton, because we get to sweat Joshua Filler and James Aranas, and James came off winning the Scotty Townsend and now getting second place in the Diamond Las Vegas Open. He's playing some really, really, really top-notch pool. And he's going to be playing against Joshua Filler now in a race to 110 ball. Rack your own. So we can start the discussion off with who do we think is going to win? Does anybody want to go first on that?
It's going to be, what are the numbers? I mean, it's going to be close, this one.
Well, James Aranas is
I watched him knock, no, is this on a 7-foot table? Because I watched him knocking them around.
No, I believe this is. I believe this is actually being played at Roy's home, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And
on the 9-footer,
and he has a 9-footer there. I gotta verify that, but I think it's.
That's what I was told as well.
Yeah.
I'd bet myself flip a coin.
Really? Okay.
With these two guys, really, honestly, I can't pick one.
So James Aranas, before the Diamond Las Vegas, and maybe even before the Scotty Townsend, he was about an 805 Fargo, somewhere in there. Joshua Filler's about an 825, I think. I mean, James is playing some really, really, really solid pool, but James is. There's levels to this, right? I mean, if you took the top 5 pool players in the world, I don't think that you could create a top 5 without Joshua Filler being on it. I mean, I'm sure somebody out there has one without it, but I would question their credibility as somebody who's picking their top 5. James is getting there, and he's getting there extremely quickly. The dude is super talented, and he has all of the resources at his behest to get to be a better player. But I got to take Filler by maybe 15 games, something like that.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I really like this matchup, and whatever happens, I'm excited that I get to watch it. That's the biggest thing, is that I'm just glad that they're matching up.
Snaps to that.
What I think is interesting. Okay, so first of all, and I was going to say this because I was thinking about, you'd picked Filler last week for the Diamond tournament and talked about how he was maybe the best player on the planet, even though it's been a few events. He was just so hot. And so there was something I wanted to talk about, which is what I call the 2-year rule. And so I have seen this again and again and again with pool, where somebody comes along and they hit stride and they really come on the scene. And when somebody first breaks onto the scene, it's almost like they hit this hyperdrive that's super. It's beyond. It's the sum is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. They hit this thing where it all comes together: confidence and intimidation and belief and focus, and they're feeling like this destiny is here. It's mine for the taking. And all of a sudden, they just hyperdrive their game, and they can achieve results that are just completely dominant and transcendent. And I've seen it again and again from different players, and it seems to last around 2 years. And so just to kind of give a couple of examples, like I remember when I mentioned Mika winning back-to-back U.S. Opens. Mika was around for, many, 10, 15 years playing professional pool, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, he'd always been around, but he was always kind of considered like one of the good players in the field. He was never an elite favorite to win. All of a sudden, in 2007, he hit this gear where he just ran over everybody, and he won back-to-back U.S. Opens, including the 11 matches in a row on the B side. He won a bunch of other tournaments in there as well, and he was almost untouchable. It's like his game came together in a way, his confidence, his belief, all that stuff. And then something happened, and it just kind of faded out a little bit, and he's always been a great player. And I mean, if he hears this, like, Mika, you're Hall of Fame, no shame, but it's just one of those things. It's hard to maintain that superhuman level of focus, belief, and desire. And so and I've seen this locally. I've seen this with players. I've gone through this when I kind of came on the regional scene around my area. I've seen a number of other players go through this, and now I'm at the point where I just call it the 2-year rule. So when somebody first breaks on the scene and they start popping off tournaments, I'm like, yep, nobody's going to touch them for about 2 years. And then the question is what happens after those 2 years. And some players sink a little bit and never quite get back to that same level. Other players find a way, they kind of cool off a little bit, but then they use the time and experience that they've gained to round out their game and develop and really stay as an elite player. So like Shane's a player that caught a 2-year period where from 2006 to 2008, or, a 2 or 3 year period there where he was almost untouchable. And then he may have the superhuman hyperdrive might have cooled off, but through those 3 years, and he was able to pick up enough skills and round out his game enough that he was able to stay at the top and remain at the top for a number of years. I look at Josh Filler as that kind of player. I think that for 2 years, the guy was almost untouchable. And now he's still, like, I still put him right up there in the top 5, like you're saying. I no longer think that he has that untouchable, invincible, magical thing going on right now. I think he went from being, now that means he went from being almost like invincible, like Super Mario in Mario 1 where he gets the star and he's just bouncing around and waltzing through enemies. That's how Josh Filler was for 2 years. Now his invincibility is worn off and he has sank to the level of just being one of the top 3 or 4 players in the world. So I'm not saying he's not one of the top 3 or 4 in the world, but I'm saying that he's no longer invincible and that there was a while where he was. Anyway, I just wanted to mention a little bit about the 2-year rule, and I still think he's at the top. And I do think that he's also going to round out his game. I think his tactics have gotten strong, his safeties, his kicks, his game management. I think he's matured a lot in those years. So after, even though he's kind of quote unquote come down to earth, I look for him to be one of those guys that's a dominant player for the next 10, 20 years. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's going to stay at the top, and I think he's going to have plenty more titles. I think he might be able to do a lot of the stuff that Shane's done over the last 15 years. I just think he's going to have some losses along the way for once. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you.
And then I think go ahead. Yeah,
if you don't mind, I think Max Leshner's joining into that 2-year category that you're talking about right now. Since the International Open last year, he's been really playing some super solid pool, and the fear isn't quite as high for him as it was for Joshua Filler because he's coming from such a lower level. Like Joshua Filler started as a top tier pro, and then he went to being that invincible player that you're talking about, where Max Leshner kind of came from nowhere and then turned into a top tier pro, and that's kind of where he's at now with the fearlessness and the confidence that is driving him to maybe that just below that top echelon of players. But it kind of follows along with maybe your 2-year rule of invincibility just from a lower level.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. He just stepped up. He stepped up a bit level in a big way, and yeah, that match he put on Shane was something for the history books. But so it's very interesting to see. And then meanwhile, Aranas talking again about the 2-year rule. Here's a guy whose game is coming together in a big way. We've talked about that recently. So again, though, to your point, is his 2 years about to happen, or is it happening like Filler's, or is his 2 years allowing him now to finally start getting the results that we might have expected to see when we saw him play a few years ago? So anyway, how I see this matchup is Filler's the favorite. I think anybody that really has seen what Filler can do, what are the differences in their games? Why is he the favorite? Where exactly does it play out? It's hard to pinpoint exactly, other than the fact that Filler has proven that he can get it done. He's proven he's just a tremendous money player. He's a tremendous pool player. And bottom line is, anybody that wants to bet against Filler in the ring right now, I remember wondering if he played Shane, who I would bet on, and I'm not going to go into that conversation. But the point is that he is the only player that could play Shane where I would hesitate to bet on Shane. And so I'm not going to go into who I would bet on and why, but I'd say that he is Filler's in a class almost by himself right now when it comes to money games. So I think he's the favorite. But what I would say about James is, James is playing so well and he is coming into his gear, and that Filler has come down to earth just a tad to where I think it might be a little bit closer than people think. But it's hard to say. I don't see how Aranas could win. I really don't. I think that I think that Filler's got to win this match. It might be 15 games, it might be 8, it might be 20. So originally when I was going in, I thought that people might overrate Josh Filler because they might think that he still has his Mario invincibility star. And I thought that they might underrate James because James is, just hasn't been in the conversation with guys like Filler for a while. And so my original thought was, well, if the spread's big enough and people don't realize that Filler's cooled off and they don't realize that Aranas is on a uptick here, maybe I could get somebody giving up the wrong odds or the wrong number of games. But in the end, I like betting on the guys that win the set. And I just think Joshua's going to win. So even if I'm having to give up the odds and put my money in on the side of the known favorite, well, there's a reason he's a known favorite. It's because he's probably going to get the job done here.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if I had to guess, I'd go with the higher Fargo number.
I think I just don't see how James can fade.
But he won't win if I bet on him, so I'm not going to bet.
Yeah, right. Especially if you bet against me. Or bet
right.
with me.
He's not winning.
Yeah. So I just don't see how James can fade Joshua Filler's break. And Joshua Filler has one of the best 10-ball breaks in the world. I mean, he's probably not in the top 3, 4, 5, something like that. But he has a break that can compete with the likes of Jason Shaw and Shane Ben Boning and Jung-Lin Chang, players like that. He has a break that can compete with them, but he's not quite to that level on this 10-ball break. But he's the next best thing. And James Aranas, if there is anything that you could say about his game right now, because he has a ton of run-out abilities, his break may not has developed as deeply as players like Joshua Filler or some of the other players I just named, and that's really tough to fade in a race to 100 winner break rack your own. I mean, it's really tough to run a 5, 6, 7 if your break isn't at that top level. And when you're sitting down watching somebody who can run a 5, 6, 7 basically at will because of how strong your break is, that's really tough to fade over a race to 100.
Yeah, that's 100% for sure. I'd also say that his Filler has the confidence, the experience, that he has the grappling game, and there's something about it that's I was kind of debating whether to bring it up because I'm not sure if I can express it well, but it's a weird contradiction. Is when you're betting on a pool player, you'd like them to have two things that sound like they're contradictory. You want them to feel like they're loose as a goose, relaxed, comfortable, able to shoot like there's not a single dollar being bet on the match. You want them to be able to shoot completely trusting and free and unencumbered. But you also want them to understand how important each inning is and how important certain shots are. And so it seems like these two things go kind of conflicted, and a lot of it, a lot of times people struggle with the balance of, sometimes people get pretty loosey-goosey and then they don't put enough care into certain, position or certain getting a hook at a certain safety. They're just kind of, leak off a few chances and then lose because of it, because they were just a little bit too loose. And of course we've seen people that get too tight. I think Josh Filler has this amazing ability to shoot extremely loose while still playing careful and valuing each inning at a very high value. And I don't know how he does that. If I knew, I would be Josh Filler. That's what makes him so spectacular, in my opinion, is that he can play both careful and loose at the same time. And when I watch James play, James can play loose and very smooth and very loose, but he doesn't play quite as tight as Filler does. And so somehow I think that Aranas' big hammer is that Aranas' big strength is that he's loose and that he plays loose and fairly tight. But Filler, when he meets Filler, he's playing somebody that plays equally loose and yet tighter, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, it does make a lot of sense because there is a fine line in the focus aspect of the game where you do want adrenaline going through your body. You do want some. You just don't want to be out there flopping around like a half-dead fish. But you don't want too much. You get too much adrenaline, and now all of a sudden that 2-foot draw shot turns into 3, and you don't want that. So, yeah, that's finding that perfect mix. Or training to get that perfect mix, like going to one of your boot camps and you helping people find that point where their adrenaline matches their casualness so that you can be relaxed and accurate, because that focus needs to be there, like Neight, relaxed but accurate.
Aw, Rob, you always want to make me smile.
Yeah, I know.
Such a sweetie. So we can wrap up this discussion with some predictions. So, Rob, why don't you take it away? What is your prediction for this match?
Okay, I'm going to pick the one who's not going to win, because I do it every time. So I'm taking the underdog. I'm take James.
What's the score?
The score is a 100-96.
Ooh, that would be a fun one to watch. All right, Demetrius, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll take Joshua Filler. And with all respect to my man Aranas, I love Aranas, and I'm looking forward to his career, his future. But right now, I think I like your line, 100-85. Let me think about that. I actually think that the final score might even be more lopsided. But I mean, nobody call me. I'm not giving up 15 games, so don't even call me with that. But yeah, I think that's
it's what I think, but I won't bet on it.
yeah. I got to have the nuts, man.
Exactly.
I don't like to gamble. I just bet.
No, I like to win.
I think that's a pretty fair line. It's 100-85. I think that's
probably
pretty good job. Pretty good job.
Yeah, and I'll take Filler 100-82. I think is what the final is going to end up being.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that Filler wins by 20, and I just don't think I'll give up more than like 5.
Yeah, and I'll say this: if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said probably 100-65, maybe 100-70 at best. Now it's 100-80, 185, somewhere in there. You ask me this to project a year from now, and I'm right where Rob was in the beginning, and I'm going to take a coin flip. I don't know who it's going to be. The career trajectory of James Aranas is there's kind of this artificial bubble of 830 Fargo where I don't know that that's ever been breached, at least not from a real lengthy amount of time. And it kind of seems like this artificial bubble that is kind of the max that a human can get to as far as a pool player. And, it seems like Joshua Filler has nowhere to go but maybe up or down 3 to 4 points. And James is doing nothing but improving by the second, seemingly. So I think a year from now, I think these two could be looking at each other eye to eye. And this would be an amazing discussion to have in a year from now. But
yeah, it's gonna be a classic rivalry like Shane and Alex. One thing I have to throw out there too for people that don't really get the race to 100 and how that changes things. If they were playing a series of races to 10, and if they were to play 20, 30 races to 10, and you were to average out the scores, it might average out to where Filler was winning. To where if you'd added up all their individual set scores, it might end up being 100-95 Filler. So that might be. If they were gonna play a race to 10, I'm not sure I'd want to give up. I'm not going to give up 2 games and take Filler. I'm not even sure I'd want to give up a game.
Yeah. No way.
But what happens is in a race to 100, the person that gets out to an early lead gets more and more confidence, more and more momentum. The other guy's more and more up against it. So if you think of how you're feeling when you're struggling and you're losing and you're feeling hopeless and you're feeling outmatched and outclassed and you're just drawing dead, all those things are things that the person behind has to deal with. And so then, if Aranas were to get down, say 50-40, then all of a sudden, or even if he was to, whatever it is, that's where the runaway games can happen, where Filler could win by 100-76. And it doesn't mean that he's going to win 4-3 if they play shorter sets. It just means that in that format, rarely do you see a close set. Usually if there is a better player, usually the better player gets in lead and then just kind of runs away with it. And that's the only reason why the spread's going to be as much as it's going to be, because if they were to play a series of races to 10, it would probably be 10-9.4.
Yeah. No, I think I actually agree with that. There is something to not being able to reset. So, the first day they're playing to 33, the second day they're playing to 66, the third day they're closing it out. And there is something even to a more extreme example, if they played 20 races to 5, I bet by the end of it, James would probably end up winning 9 of them, and Joshua Filler would end up winning 11 of them, and it'd turn out to be something very, very, very close to even games, because you're constantly resetting and there's no momentum. The momentum is 2 to 3 games at a time, as opposed to 10 to 20 games at a time, where a race to 100 is. When you're constantly resetting on your sets, and mentally resetting, it's really hard to maintain a fierce level of focus and determination over the course of 6 races to 5. So, and this is obviously a thought experiment that I don't know that will ever happen. I mean, who's going to play 20 races to 5 in a row for the cash? But it would be interesting to see what would happen in a set like this, because I think James Aranas might even come out ahead after that.
It would be fun to see.
Yeah.
I played a game of straight pool to 1,000 one time.
That took way too long, I bet.
3 weeks.
Yeah, sounds right.
Sounds like some of my billiard games.
Yeah. So why don't we leave it there, and we'll move on to the end of the podcast.
Oh, no. Really, the end? Already?
Yeah, well, don't worry, Rob. It's going to get bad.
God, we're just getting warmed up, guys.
I know. Well, so at the podcast here, we tend not to take any political stances. Politics are extremely polarizing, and everybody has ridiculously strong opinions these days, and everybody's right on every single thing that they think. So we are not going to be taking any political stances, but we would be completely insubordinate of our responsibilities as a podcast to not cover what is going on with the coronavirus and the effect that it's not only having on the human toll of the U.S., but also the pool halls that are already pretty much struggling to survive and grind out a living. So with the discussion today, we are going to talk about the coronavirus's impact on not only the people that play the game, but the businesses that are supportive by the game. So I will start this off with a bit of a rant, I guess. And this is, I'm a young guy. Rob, you're not a young guy. Demetrius, you're a pretty young guy. The virus doesn't affect Demetrius and I. Rob, you're going to be my old man, so just buckle up. You're going to get torched here. The virus is not going to affect people like Demetrius. It's not going to affect people like myself. It is the elderly, people who already have pre-existing conditions. Those are the people that are going to be mostly affected by this disease. So when you are saying that this doesn't affect me, why do I have to worry about any of this? It's not a matter of protecting yourself. It's a matter of protecting the people around you that do not have the luxury of your health or your ability to fight off this infection. With that being said, obviously the quarantines that some of the people are saying right now is just crazy. You know, some people are saying 4 to 6 to 8 to 12 weeks. I've seen some things that says it's going to be the end of the summer and even into the fall before this is anywhere close to being taken care of. I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to be a doctor. I would just say that, you know, take care of your personal hygiene, wash your hands, and if you're going to be around somebody who is physically compromised, try to really make sure you go the extra mile to not only protect yourself, but protect the people around you as well. Maybe, do either of you guys want to chime in on that or add to anything?
Well, I got a couple of facts that I looked up today about it that are interesting, and I think if you just take this into consideration, if you are going to go out any place, if you're going to be around anywhere where you're going to be touching things that other people have touched, doorknobs, handles, things like that, just put a pair of rubber gloves on before you go into these places, and then take them off, throw them away when you get out, because that's how it's transmitted. Unless somebody breathes or spits or sneezes right in your face, it's not going to get transmitted any other way. It's on surfaces. And it's clinging to droplets of fluid that are expelled from people, and it's on the floors, it's on tabletops, countertops, doorknobs. Things like that is where the virus is. It's not in the air. It's falling to the gravity's bringing it down. And so a mask, if you want not to get the virus, isn't going to help you at all, because it gets on your hands, you touch your face, and there it is. If you are tested positive for it, don't have any symptoms, and you want to go out, wear a mask. And yes, absolutely wash your hands a lot. You know, if you go to a pool hall that's still open, if you find one, you know, wash your hands a few times. Wear rubber gloves while you're in there, because it's your hands that are the problem. So that's what I read today, and I also read four facts about down the road. What's going to happen 2 months from now? Say a month, 2 months, 4 months. that there's 4 case scenarios. One, everybody in the world gets it and millions of people die. Okay, that's the worst case scenario. The one that's probably going to happen is that within 2 months there's going to be a deterrent medicine. In other words, there's going to be a medicine or a shot you can get, vaccine you can get, that'll keep you from getting the virus, much like the AIDS virus. Now, there's a vaccine you can take so you don't get it. That's only at the most 2 months away. The other course of action is that this thing just dies out for no reason. And that does happen, and that is projected by some scientists, that it just dies out, just quits. And they go, where'd it go? What happened? That's not the more likely. The more likely is that we get it like South Korea right now. They have got it under control. There's fewer cases today than there were yesterday and the day before and the day before that in South Korea. So that at some point in time, if we react like South Korea did, and we're starting to now, that's what's probably going to happen, along with a not a cure for it, a vaccine, but something that'll keep you from getting it. Okay, those are things I just looked up today and read.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of insight. I appreciate you guys sharing. I definitely feel a lot of compassion for the people that are being impacted. Both the people that are directly, having health issues and the families and the inevitable pain that's going to come with, the consequences to whatever extent it is, so kind of just a moment of silence for the people dealing with this. But then the economic hardships. I mean, I know that it's going to have a huge shock wave running across, you're talking about, pool halls closing, of course, and tournaments being canceled. And, there was a post on AZ Billiards today about the impact it's going to have on a lot of pro pool players that, if all the pro tournaments are shut down, how many of these guys actually have a cushion? And then I got to thinking about me, I know I'll just plug this now. I'll just say, hey, I left my job about 6 weeks ago because, I had a booked up calendar and people were calling me to book lessons. And obviously with, travel being highly reconsidered here, I mean, I got a couple of people that have contacted me and I appreciate it. But I mean, every trip that I schedule right now is kind of pending, a zombie apocalypse. So it's I definitely wouldn't have left my job if I'd known this was going to come, so, but it's okay. And I think what's happened is I went from being a little irritated because at first I was frustrated. I was like, man, my timing is terrible. I do this, make this leap, and then all of a sudden we kind of have to go into lockdown for an indefinite period of time. But then I realized, I really started to realize the gravity of the situation, which is, man, this is way bigger than just, my new fledgling business kind of having a slow few months. This is way beyond that. There's going to be, impacts to people way beyond what I'm going to feel. And so I've kind of let go of all that. And now I'm just hoping that we can all pull through this together. And that all being said, we can talk about whatever else, but I do want to make a little request, which is to those that are listening to this podcast that are within driving distance of Minneapolis. I know we've got a pretty good Midwest audience here. If you were planning on going to pool tournaments and those pool tournaments are being canceled and you now have free time and you're like, man, the pool halls are closed, I can't go to these tournaments, what should I do? Well, now might be a good time to come do a boot camp because my pool room is my basement here, my 9-foot diamond is socially distanced. So it is definitely a nice environment to train pool. And if you're looking for something to do to get your pool on and to take advantage of this lull, that would be great.
For sure.
Probably.
Yeah. If you're serious about getting your pool game better, I mean, Demetrius is going to be one of your best options, if not the best option. So I can echo that. So we can branch off from that. Again, it's a tough subject to talk about because everybody's super polarized on it. We're not trying to make any political statements here. We're just, we're trying to stick with what's out there and what that means. But so let's move on from that and let's move to what this actually means for the billiards industry. So I know in Wisconsin, and you guys, well, Rob, you're in Wisconsin too, but Demetrius, you could tell us if this is any different for you. They have Tony Evers is a governor of Wisconsin, and he has actually made it so any groupings of 50 people or more must be canceled. So what does that mean for a local pool hall? Well, you cannot have tournaments, obviously. you might not even be able to be open. I mean, how do you even govern that? You have to have a bouncer on, on duty to count out 50 people, and once 50 people are in, you say nobody else can come in. Like, I don't know how you would do that. So it seems like a lot of the pool halls are just going to have to close down. So anybody who knows pool players, we're kind of notorious for being cheap. We don't like spending a lot of money. We drink pop or soda or water, and we don't drink a lot of beers. There's obviously exceptions to that, but for the most part, pool players are notorious for being cheap. So the profit margins for a pool hall owner are already very, very low. You throw something in like this, and there's not a lot of pool halls around the country that are going to be able to weather this kind of storm over what could be 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. There will probably be a lot of pool hall closes, and a lot of them could be very, very close to you. They might even be your local pool room. There are a lot of ways that you could potentially help support them if you have the financial means to do so. A couple of the suggestions that I saw on Facebook or around was, if you're going to buy the table time anyways, reach out to your pool hall and tell them, hey, I'm going to pay for this anyways. Let me pay it ahead of time, help you out in the near term, and give me some vouchers for, table time in the next, in the coming months. Or, if you've wanted to get a new pool cue or a new carbon fiber shaft or something like that, reach out to your pool hall. A lot of them are vendors for a lot of the stuff that you want to get. This is all obviously predicated on whether or not you can financially swing it yourself, but there's a lot of things that you can do to support your pool hall, even if they're not going to be open over the next few weeks. And there's a lot of things that, the difference might be whether or not they have the support from the people who aren't showing up. So it's something that you could potentially do. Reach out to your local pool hall owner and see if they need the support. Are there any other suggestions that you two have that might be good options?
I know that around my area, the restaurants are being closed for dine-in, but they're not being closed for takeout. So I'm kind of like, I don't normally go out to restaurants a ton, but I might make a point to get some takeout from a few of these places just to kind of, try to, like you're saying, there's a few things like how can we, or, like you're saying, gift certificates, find a way, because if we all, of course, first you have to take care of your family. So if you're in a spot where your paycheck to paycheck, your industry is directly being impacted to where you've got concerns about your ability to provide for your own loved ones, of course, take care of yourself. But once you've got your home front secured, and if you're fortunate enough to be, in a spot to where you're not concerned about your ability to provide in the months ahead, then I think that it's important to keep the economy going. Because if everybody just hunkers down and goes into survival mode and says, I'm going to hoard, acorns like a squirrel all winter, then that's just going to magnify. If we allow this to shut us down, it's just going to magnify the impact on the people that are in our community. And so, yes, some of the other good suggestions are doing business with the small mom and pop shops and the local places. Of course, we all like to buy, local. We all like to support local shops, but now more than ever, Amazon and Target and Walmart, they're going to find a way to the other side of all this. We got to take care of the people that are close.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally.
Yeah, and I mean, these pool halls really, really do not have, generally speaking, they do not have a lot of reserves to fall back on. So I think that was the table time vouchers, the gift cards was a great idea too. I mean, if you could get a couple $100 worth of gift cards and you could just get some of that revenue into these pool halls, you're going to spend the money there anyways, or you would think you would if you're going to your local pool halls regularly. I mean, they might. Just think of the repercussions if they're not able to weather this storm and you lose your favorite pool hall because, they weren't able to weather a storm like this. Obviously, if, reach out to your local pool hall owners and see if they need the support. And if they need the support, maybe, if you're able to, like we said, if you're able to, it might be a really good idea to do it. It might be the difference between having a local pool hall to go to and not having one. So I guess we can move on from that, and let's talk about what it'll have as far as the pool in general scene. So, Dammy, you kind of hinted at this earlier, where like a lot of the pros, especially the lower tier pros, they don't have the financial means to be able to weather this storm. What does it actually mean for players like that? Well,
I mean, this is one of those spots where economic impact to people that are in a lot of pros, lower end pros, as we know, are not very well financially off. They're pursuing it out of their craft and their art and their passion, competitive fire, and their dreams. And because the lifestyle they lead, they're willing to live frugally to pursue a life they want to live. And so the impact of pools shutting down for a little while, of course, they've got no means of generating income, and many of them don't have a big cushion. So, of course, at times like this, you'd hope that they would have family and that they could just, if they can't sustain themselves, we'd hope that we could all fall back on, our loved ones and kind of hunker down and do what we need to do. And so, there's going to be sacrifices. I'm sure that many pros have the ability they've got enough money set aside and they're able to just kind of sit back and practice in their basement for a while. Others might not, and they might have to just, like I said, stay with a family member and just sleep on a friend's couch for a few months. I mean, everybody's in a different spot, and that's not just pool players. I mean, that's going to be a lot of players. That's going to be a lot of people that are impacted by these waves. And so I don't really know that there's a lot to say other than, they might have to get an odd job or, pick up some temp work or just do whatever, you know what I mean? But, everybody's in a different spot, but we're all going to we all have this in common, which is we're all facing the same wave, and we're all going to have to do what we have to do to keep the wheels turning while we're not allowed out after dark or whatever the next law is going to be.
Yeah. It seems like a good time to have a podcast, huh? Lots of time sitting in my apartment doing podcasting. Should be fun.
There you go, Nate. That's it. During this lapse in the country functioning as normal, whether it be 2 weeks or a month or a month and a half.
But in all seriousness, it reminds me of when you say that is I talk about this all the time. I was a sales manager and I ran a team, and I always talked about it in chess. I'm a game guy, and in chess, whenever somebody makes a move, whatever piece they move, it starts attacking new squares, but it's also no longer attacking the squares it used to. And so they call that in chess, the space left behind. And so whenever an opponent makes a move, of course, you've got to be asking questions like, what are their threats? What is their idea? What squares are they now attacking? But you're also supposed to train your mind to say, what are they no longer doing? What is that piece no longer covering? What is that piece no longer defending? What weaknesses did that last move create? And a lot of times winning tactics involve recognizing opportunities left behind from moves. And so the same way when I was in sales, sometimes things would happen where all of a sudden your lead flow is impacted. And it's like, okay, you've got less leads, but it's not just a loss. What did you gain? And so you may have lost leads or new opportunities, but you may have gained time, because before, if you were talking to 20 new customers a day and now we're only getting 8, well, then however much time it would have taken you to spend on those 12 customers, you just freed up 60% of your time for the day. So now that only has to be a strict liability if you just throw that time away. But if you realize, hey, I've got an opportunity, I've gained something, which is I've gained some resources of time, and it's up to me how I want to reallocate and reinvest that time. And so, yes, we've lost some things, but we also are going to have opportunities to replace the activities we can't do with what we choose to do. And if we choose to lay around and watch YouTube videos for 10 hours a day or Netflix binge, well, then we can write that off as a total loss. But if we take the opportunity and that resource and reinvest into something productive, it's up to us. We can't control what we can't control, but we can control what we can control, and how we invest those, how we reinvest, and what can we do is a very good question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice, motivational.
Yep. So why don't we wrap up this at that point, and we can move on to our tips segment. So, Rob, do you want to take it away first?
The tip. Yeah, this last weekend, a player from Chicago, a billiard player, I asked him for a little lesson. I says, "Come on, Brian." And Brian Half is his name, and I said, "Just give me a little lesson. Give me something I can take home with for 2 months, and don't make it so complicated I can't remember it or you have to write it down or anything." So he started talking about speed, spin, and angle and that relationship. And so what I'm going to put out here for a tip is for the majority of players out there that are beginning players, bang the balls around, league players, and one night a week or whatever, and have a table at home or their buddy has one. I'll tell you this. from what I just learned this weekend, after playing a game for 60 years, I learned some stuff this weekend that I did not know. And knowing that now, I would go back. And when I was learning how to play the game, I would now take the cue ball and set up a shot, any shot you want. And don't make it a real tough shot. Make it a, like 10-degree, 15-degree cut or whatever it is, or maybe even straight in. But I would hit that shot with absolutely center ball. And I would hit it, cut it that way to the right, cut it to the left. That same shot with center ball. And then every other shot I would do would be center ball. And then I would go from there. And I would take a little outside of that center, a half a tip, and shoot that same shot and just visualize, look where that cue ball goes from there. I never did that when I was learning how to play. Nobody ever told me to do that. I just knew if you hit the ball on the right side, it would spin this way off the rail. If you hit it on the left, it would go this way. If you hit it on the bottom, it would come back to you. On the top, it would go forward. That's all I knew. It's all I ever needed to know to play pocket pool. And I think back and I go, gosh, I've never, ever in pocket pool hit a ball in the center of the ball. I don't think. Ever. It's been everywhere but the center. And so I had no idea of what happens to that cue ball by just adding a little bit of tip all the way around and all the way around. I don't know. There's a video out there of some teaching player that I watched once, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where this fella shoots basically the same shot in, and he makes the cue ball on the third rail end up like 2 or 3 inches down the rail all the way down the table. He just keeps getting that cue ball to end up in a different spot, and then he tells you what he's doing when he's doing that with the cue ball. And I saw that, of course, but I didn't apply it. I went, okay, I know that. but I didn't know that. I didn't really know it. Not like I'm going to try to learn now in the next couple months. So I'm going to go back to that point and go back to that on my billiard table and start experimenting with that. So I would say, put this out there, all the B players, all the people learning. Learn how to pocket balls with center ball. Just learn how to do that. Repeat it until you got it. And then go from there and expand what you know from that. So there's my tip.
There is definitely something to that. I can say that if I'm cutting a ball, like let's say I'm on the long rail, about the third diamond, I'm going to make that shot about 99 out of 100 times if I'm using outside spin, throwing the ball towards the pocket. And
right.
if I have to hit that shot with center ball, I probably drop 25% on whether I'm going to make that ball or not. I've developed my my English and my stroke to be able to really know exactly how to control that outside spin and how it throws the ball towards the pocket. That I know how center ball is going to do it, but I'm not as good at doing it consistently as I am with the outside spin. So I could definitely echo that. It's just
so you're probably never going to use center ball hits.
Not unless I have to
in your game.
No, I am 40% of my shots are used. I use outside English on most of my shots. If I'm cutting a ball, probably 40% of my shots are using outside spin. That's just how I like to play my game. So
yeah, I'm like 60% on that.
Yeah. So I can take it away from here. And my advice this week, and this is going to be kind of actually similar to yours, but completely not at all, and completely opposite, basically. I like to do this drill with some of the students that I'm teaching when basically if somebody asks me for advice, that's a lesser player, usually 600 or below, and one thing that I like to have them do is I have them take a dollar bill out of their pocket, and I have them throw it down on the pool table, and then I have them take a cue ball, and I have them take an object ball, and I have them throw it against the rail as hard as they possibly can in any direction they want to throw it in. And basically I tell them that you need to get wherever the cue ball and your object ball end up, you need to get your cue ball on or as close to that $1 bill as possible in 4 different ways. So that might be high and inside English and you go 3 rails, or that might be a straight draw stroke, or it might be a foul 2 rails out. Whatever it is, you need to find 4 different unique ways of traveling the cue ball to get your cue ball on or near or even over that dollar bill. It's less important that you land on it and more important that your cue ball travels over the direction or the path of the dollar bill. Obviously, for more advanced players, you want to try to land it on it, but for the lower level players, you want to just basically you want to make your finishing line off the last rail over or near the direction of that $1 bill. So that would be my advice this week is just grab an object ball and a cue ball, throw it up on the pool table in unique ways, and then find 4 different paths to get your cue ball all over or very near that $1 bill.
Knowing my luck, I'd throw the balls up there. I'd end up straight in, and the dollar bill would be where a stop shot would get me. And I'd have to find 4 different ways to mass hit the ball around the table and come back where it started. No, I'll tell you, I'm just kidding. Of course, I like both of these drills because they both involve, we all have a way that we like to cinch certain shots. And so there's just ways to where, certain cut shots, you like to play them with low outside, draw to the rail and back out to the middle, whatever. And it's that's just the way you like to hit that ball. And then that's great. On the one hand, it's great to have a comfortable way to pocket balls and the high percentage, to know the high percentage routes and to know the common routes very well is important. But you can't fall into cinch mode where you just stop paying attention to what else you can do. So to learn where center takes you and to learn alternative routes. I love that, Nate. A lot of times when I play the Ghost by myself, I play second best path where every transition I go, same kind of stuff you're talking about. You know what I mean? So
I like that. I like that idea
really,
though.
Really,
because where does that get you? Then you find out why you didn't pick the second best. A lot of times.
Sometimes you like it better and you learn something. So very good, Nate.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah. So I think those are a couple of gems. And with that, we can move on.
Okay, I'm going to bail out. But I do have a couple of those stories about old guys here. These are just a couple of these are stories about older people, my age or older. And this one here is a blind man and his seeing eye dog. They walk into a store and he's in the store and he grabs the dog by the tail and he starts whipping him around over his head. Circles. The store manager comes over to him and says, "Geez, hey, what are you doing?" And the blind man calmly replies him, "I'm just looking around."
That's good.
Oh,
I like bad jokes.
And there are 3 old guys that are going for a walk. The first guy says, "Windy, isn't it?" The second guy says, "No, it's Thursday." And the third guy says, "So am I. Let's go get a beer."
That's an old crowd that I could hang out with.
Yeah,
we're getting.
I've heard that one. I've heard that one's a classic of my family. Yeah.
And this one here.
We're getting a recreation of Rob's tidbits.
Yeah,
for anybody who's been on the
this
podcast
is just
for a while.
a couple of little things here, but they're kind of cute. A little old man shuffles slowly into an ice cream parlor, pulls himself up on the stool slowly and painfully, and after he catches his breath, he says, Say, miss, can I have a banana split?" The waitress asks kindly, "Crushed nuts?" And he replies, "No arthritis."
All right. Well, I like the dog one.
Now we're into cringeworthy ones.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you're done.
That wasn't so bad, was it? That wasn't a swear word or anything.
Yeah, you're done.
All right. So, that was bizarre. But anyway, it's good stuff. So, let's see here. Coach's Corner. Coach's Corner 4. Demetrius Gelatis here. Looking forward to helping you get your pool game to the next level. And tonight, I want to tell you guys, these are not all my ideas. So, some of the stuff I get from other people, from other, things that I've either read or people have taught me. And this one, I don't remember the name of the author. It was actually a golfer, and he had a book, and I'm not sure if it was the author of, I won't even speculate. So if somebody knows, maybe you can message me and I can get him credit next week. But he talked about, this is very important to me because he talked about something called the sponge versus the bull. And it's something I wanted to share because I had somebody email me in with a question. And the idea with the sponge versus the bull is that they're is a balance that you need to have between being closed-minded and being wishy-washy. So the sponge, he says the sponge is the person that's too wishy-washy. They don't have that kind of, I'm going to make this decision. Here's where I'm going to go. Here's how I'm going to do it. Here's what's going to happen. They don't have the conviction and vision, and kind of like, they're just not very confident. And maybe they're always questioning how they're doing what they're doing. Maybe they're perfectionists, and and so every time a new article comes out, or every time they see a new player run a bunch of racks, like, oh, I want to make my game look like his now. And so they don't love their own talent. They don't have their own path to follow, and they're always changing things up. And so the reason this whole topic came up with the sponge versus the bull is somebody emailed me, and they were saying that they were really struggling with their fundamentals. And they proceeded to tell me how they would try something out, and it would work at first, but then it wouldn't really work. And so then they'd make some changes, and then they'd change this, and it wouldn't really work for very long. And they've been struggling and struggling and changing and changing. And it sounded like they'd been on this merry-go-round or this kaleidoscope of fundamentals for, I don't know how long, 6 months, a year. It had just been kind of, they had not found a way to do it that worked for them. And they asked me for my advice, or if I had any advice. And I said, the problem is that, like in a science experiment, if you want to do a science experiment, you control for one variable. You have a bunch of fixed constants, and then you have one variable so that you could test and make some conclusions about that variable. And if you're changing everything on every trial, then you don't really get good feedback, because you've got so many moving parts. You just don't really know what it is that's working or not working. Similarly, with a pool game, there's a fine line between having a pool game and then making a tweak or trying to work on one aspect of your pool game fundamentally, versus not even having a baseline to where you don't even have a pool game that you're working on. You just have a never-ending shifting series of gobbledygook that it's just never, you don't even have a pool game that you're tinkering on anymore. You've just got a mess. And so the problem with that is that fundamentals are not something to where you're going to stumble on the perfect fit, and when you do, it's going to click and you're never going to miss. Fundamentals are a skill that must be practiced and developed. And so if you're looking for something to click and fit together, unfortunately, there's a lot of different ways to stand and hold a cue and sight and shoot and deliver your stroke. And they all take a lot of practice. And so by tearing it all down and starting over, and tearing it all down and starting over, and doing that again and again and again, maybe 3 of those combinations of fundamentals that you've stumbled upon would have worked had you stuck it out and actually put in some time and commitment to that setup. And so what I told him to do was find something that was comfortable, that, of the things he's done, what was the thing that seemed most comfortable? Why don't you just start there, commit to doing it for 3 to 6 months, and then just forbidding yourself from making any changes? Because I know he's a perfectionist, and I've been through this myself. But sometimes you just have to brute force it and say, there's no easy way that this is going to come together. I'm just going to have to pick a path, commit to it. And I told him, I said, it's almost like there's 50 roads that lead to this destination that's a long way away. And you keep taking 2 steps, then turning back because you're not there yet. Like, it's not so much about whether you're on the perfect path. Why don't you pick a path and stick with it for a while and try to make some progress? So that's the danger of being a sponge, is that you have to establish a baseline. You have to control variables. You have to gain some kind of commitment to what the path you're on is. And you can strategically reevaluate and make some tweaks here and there, but you have to at least have a baseline that you're going to be making adjustments from. So then on the other end of the spectrum is the bull. And the bull is the person that thinks they know it all. And these people are plentiful. It seems like pool, you get both ends. You get the perfectionists, and then you get the perfectionists that are paranoid that they might be doing something imperfect, so they think everything they do is wrong. And then you've got the perfectionists that think everything they do is perfect and that they know it all and that they're right. It's very, very tough. You don't get a lot of moderate, people with pool. It's a very extreme game. But the thing with the bull is these people think that they have it all figured out. And then usually, of course, then they have to be able to explain, well, why am I not Shane Van Boening or Joshua Filler? And they always come back to, well, maybe I just don't have the time to put into my game, or I don't have the talent, or once I do put in the time into my game, it'll come together and I'll be the best because I just haven't figured out. And some of these, like I've got people that I've known for many, many years that know that I play pretty good pool and know a lot about the game that have never asked me a single question in 10 or 20 years of knowing me about pool and if I've ever, heaven forbid that we have a conversation, I don't even volunteer anything, but if we ever have a conversation where I bring something up, they'll argue with me to the death on every pattern, on every shot. You know, the people that plant their flag in the sand and argue to the death and think that they're right on everything because they've got this idea of how they think pool ought to work, and they're just going to pound their head against it and try to make that work. And some people, even if they're shown a better way, will keep doing it the way they're doing it because it's almost like they'd rather be right than get better. And so that's the day. Now, it's really good. It's good to have confidence. It's good to have belief, and it's good to, come up with ideas that they believe in and stick with them. But man, there's a lot of, like, nobody knows it all. And we're all wrong about a lot of things. And I'm still learning things and being shown things. And I certainly know a lot of information that, players that are, anybody that's not touring around and making a good living at the game, I probably have some insight. So the bottom line is, the question you've got to ask yourself is, which is more important, being right or growing as a player? And if you really want to grow as a player, then you have to check your game once in a while and say, hey, I think I know what's going on, but who do I trust that's competent, and kind of force yourself to expose yourself to some new ideas, maybe being a little open-minded. So bottom line is, it can be bad to be on either end of that spectrum. If you're too spongy, if you're too bullish, those things can be tough. You want to be confident. You want to have a path. You want to have a vision. You want to have a baseline of what your game is. You want to have a plan for developing it. But then you still need contact with the outer world. You need feedback on what's working and what other people see. And if you have to question the source and just deal with people you trust, yes, you have to filter. Yes, there's a lot of bad advice and unsolicited advice. And so you have to filter, but you still have to be getting feedback from the outside world. So my advice would be, try to find that balance, and don't be a bull, don't be a sponge. Be somebody that can manage your own perfectionism. Don't let it manage you. And then, and if you need help with any of this, of course, once again, Demetrius Gelatis here. You can find me at www.mnpoolbootcamp.com. And I appreciate the questions and the support. So if you guys have questions for me, look me up and shoot me an email, info@mnpoolbootcamp.com. I'd love to hear your questions and take them on in the weeks ahead. And if you're looking to take your game to the next level, shoot me a line, and we'll get you on the calendar to put in some serious pool training. Thanks, guys.
Nice work. Another one done, and another episode now completed. How did we do?
You know what? I think that went pretty well, considering what we covered, Dan. That was we walked through some difficult conversations, and we did pretty well with them. So
we have to say bye. Let's say bye. Well,
all right.
I guess this is another episode. Demetrius, thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's been a pleasure as always, and thank you for all the listeners, Joe, Tucker, and everyone else that's listening. I love the comments. I love the questions, so keep them coming, and we've got some good feedback about some of the shows coming up that I like the interactive part of this. Podcasting is new to me. I'm not used to the one-way transmission, so I really like it when you guys comment, offer suggestions, feedback, and ask questions. Makes this really, really fun. So thanks for being a great community.
Absolutely. So till next week.
Thanks, man. I'm going to take off, and all you listeners out there, congratulations. You made it through another podcast.
Even with Rob's cringy jokes. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. If you like what you've heard and you listen through iTunes, please subscribe and leave a rating. It helps others find the podcast. As always, thank you to our sponsors, Jacoby Custom Cues, Cody's Cue Therapy, Jeff Glaz's CBD for Life Global, the Wisconsin Billiards Hall of Fame, the Rocks Sports Bar and Grill, the IQ Practice Cue Ball, and the Wisconsin Pool Player Society. If you like what you hear, consider supporting the people who support the podcast. I would also like to take this time to thank Matt Kitzman, Robert Miller, Natasha, Kurt Elliott, Scott Doolian, Corey Smith, William Sutherland, and Mike Teasy for their help to market the podcast to a larger audience. Lastly, I would like to thank my cousin Andrew Mindham for his band Hey Captain Neight's music as segment and filler music to the podcast. If you like what you hear, you can find all of his music at heycaptainneight.bandcamp.com. And Neight is Knight.